my speech. Thank you very much. You left here. Okay, stick here. So what I'd like to talk about is the original from inorganic growth, mergers and acquisitions failures, pitfalls of the M&A process, our strategic integration solution summary.
Speak into it. Let's make sure you speak into it.
Okay, closer. Thanks. So why would you carry out a merger and acquisition? So there's a number of reasons to carry out a merger or acquisition. Rapid growth or expansion. Typically you get into markets 3 to 5 times quicker than most people that would go inorganically or organically. Scale and market share would be another one. 5 times greater impact on the bottom line compared to going the organic route. There's a number of motives, and the reason you need to know about these motives is that when you plan the integration, it has to be based around the motive for carrying out the acquisition in the first instance. So it would be scope, scale, efficiency, leverage, R&D, diversity, and to transform the company. You can have a number of motives. They don't just have to be one. It can be a number of motives to carry out an acquisition. But that will depend on how you actually carry out the integration, then will depend on the actual motive. So take an Irish company called Version 1. Most of you might know of it. The first 10 years of Version 1, they grew organically. It's quite slow, so Justin and John started it off. Up to 2006, they had a 10 million turnover. Okay. After that, you're looking at, they carried out 2 acquisitions in Ireland, 2 acquisitions abroad, and they've just recently carried out an acquisition in Ireland. So to look at that from picture-wise, you can see the first 10 years very slow growth. After that then, there was a lot of growth because it was a combination of organic and inorganic growth. So 7 times in 9 years, multiple. Okay, mergers and acquisitions failure. So as we know, failure is quite big in mergers and acquisitions. 50% of all acquisitions fail outright. The statistics you'll hear about mostly would be 80%, but that's 80% fail to outperform the stock market. There's a number of reasons why. There's clear strategic rationale. Only 1/3 of CEOs have a clear strategic rationale for carrying out the acquisition. They underestimate the time and skills required in carrying out an acquisition. So literally it would take them probably 3 or 4 times the length of time to do it than they actually thought. They have limited internal resources. Typically you get 3 or 4 people involved in the acquisition, from the CEO, CFO to maybe, if you're lucky, the COO. Following on from that, then you have poor planning. 80% of acquisitions are once off, so people don't have a specialism in it. Okay, so an example of an Irish company there, they carried out an acquisition in 2015. They lost nearly 400,000 due to the integration side. They forgot about it. Okay, so typically what happens in an acquisition is that the culture of integration would be the #1 reason why acquisitions actually fail. So feelings from people would be hope and promise, followed by raised expectations, followed by initial goodwill and collaboration. But below that, what you have below the surface that you can't see is there's a lot of tension and insecurity, feelings of loss, feelings of anxiety. So people, fear and anger, rumor mongering, worst case scenarios, general increase in dysfunctional behavior. So typically you get across the line and people then need to know it's their job there. Following on from that, then the actual mergers and acquisitions process itself would be a reason for failure. It's generally the rush to close the deal. Get it across the line, we need to speed it up, we need to get it done. The seller wants to sell quick, he might want to sell quick for a reason. The buyer needs to check out the business properly. Okay, so pre-acquisition realities is most people look at acquisitions as being the quickest route to market. They have no experience of it, they have no bandwidth. Each target has different integration concerns. Okay, so each acquisition is different, so the integration problems are different as well. So you have to look at each one uniquely. Most people see the integration as something to endure, complete and survive because they don't have the experience of it. So the reality is you still have to carry out your normal duties, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. On top of that, you're looking at carrying out integration, and then on top of that, you're looking at transformational integration, okay? Which is hard to do. Post realities are 50% of your customers are less satisfied post deal, okay? Staff morale and trust is at an all-time low. 50% of your staff will exit within the first 2 years. Now you will want some of your staff to exit, but you don't want the wrong ones to exit, so you have to work that out. Bringing teams together takes longer because I don't necessarily want to work with the team in the opposing company, so that takes a little bit of a while to get used to. Lost momentum. Productivity is at an all-time low. Some people talk about productivity drops by 80% in the first 6 months. Okay, so you have to look at how can we get the productivity up. Integration doesn't happen automatically. Most of the people that carry out deals feel that integration will happen. It doesn't. It needs to be forced. It needs to be planned for. Communication then will be very important. And so again, just remember that it could be your job on the line as the CEO or the CFO if you get this wrong 2 years down the line. So our solution is a strategic solution, planning earlier in advance. So the way we like to look at it is there's information and integration planning cycles. Okay, so you have strategic high-level analysis, you have the target candidate analysis, integration planning, negotiation. You need to plan the integration for each of these cycles. Okay, so there's a life cycle to it. So there's a lot involved. Typically, you would like to be brought in 6 months in advance. It doesn't happen, but the earlier you can plan, the better. So you're looking at everything from the strategic planning, getting to know your systems and procedures, getting to know what you're like before you actually acquire the other company. Moving on from that, then you have different tools. You're talking about day one planning. You're talking about 100-day planning. You're talking about risk management planning. You need to have all of these in place to cross the line. You're talking about change management programs. Following on from that, you'd be looking at synergy planning. Most people, when they get across the line, it's all about the synergies. But the synergies are important, but the people issues are just as important. So communication would be important in any integration. Looking at how do we communicate, who do we communicate, key stakeholders, key customers, key suppliers, staff, okay? On top of that, then you have integration strategic review. So you'll have a strategy, they'll have a strategy, you have to bring the two strategies together, okay? So it's making that happen. You're looking at the procurement, how you're going to carry out the procedures, the integration management office. Now these typically would be for acquisitions that would be 5 million plus. They won't all be the same, there'll be unique aspects to each one, but they'll all need to be planned for. Knowledge management, so how do you download their brain to take advantage of the company going forward? So stage one would be having a clear strategic rationale for the acquisition in the first instance, okay? Plan early, okay? Looking at what are the objectives for carrying out the acquisition. So we like to call it characteristic mapping, looking at your organization and mapping the other organization. If you're looking at 5 different candidates, they'll all have different integration issues, so they all need to be looked at differently, okay? It's less pressurized, but organizations don't typically plan at this stage, which can be a problem, because when you get to the due diligence stage, if you haven't done any pre-planning, when you get to the due diligence stage, you won't know what questions to ask. The way we look at it is, it's from a holistic perspective. So you're looking at financial fit, strategic fit. So financial fit, people would typically look at 85% of it would be all about the finance. They don't look at the cultural fit or the organizational fit, but typically these are the reasons why most acquisitions actually fail. So you're also looking at enterprise risk analysis. This acquisition has been in the pipeline for probably the last year. The company's been in production for the last 15. They'll have nightmares, they'll have stories, and you don't want to kind of necessarily buy into those. You want to buy into the new story that you have. So the due diligence process itself, who is managing that from an integration perspective? Typically, they're just managing it from the organization, getting it across the line, but you need to manage it from the integration. There's a whole lot of people that are involved. Who is managing those? So planning is not an option, but it typically is left till you cross the line. So when we cross the line, you're talking about cultural integration planning. You're talking about customer planning. You're talking about employee planning. You're talking about leaderships. You're talking about day one plans, teamwork plans, strategy. You're talking about risk analysis. You're talking about 100-day plans, 90-day plans. You're talking about different finance, culture, thinking global but acting local. You might say there's a lot of plans, but again, if you don't do the necessarily planning, you won't have the momentum built up. So the road to the financial future, technology, 2 different systems, 2 different IT systems, sales and marketing, go-to-market strategies. These are all things that people don't think about in the pre. So that when they get across the line, it takes them 6 to 9 months to get all of those systems in place. 6 to 9 months of lost time and productivity. Are we going to move building? What Gantt charts do we need to produce? Is there unions involved? What's the organisational structure going to be like now that we're combined? We'll figure it out shortly. Typically you get across the line, we'll figure it out then. But there's a lot to be done, but we can double the turnover, double the profit. But there's a lot of hard work involved, and it typically falls to post. So in the pre, what you're looking at is the acquirer wants to celebrate because he spent the last year in the pipeline getting this deal across the line. But on the target side, what they're worried about is, do I still have a job? Will I still have the same role? Do I still have prospects? So is it business as usual? Not for the people that you've just acquired, okay? Even though you might tell them that, so you need to get them to buy into the process. So what you're looking at too is you're looking at customer can walk out the door in the first few days if you don't communicate with them. You're talking about communication, collaboration and consensus, getting the teams together, getting the customers, getting the stakeholders together, communicating with them, preventing that value leakage, building momentum, targeting some quick wins. If you haven't got quick wins, nobody will buy into the process. So the low-hanging fruit. You're looking at managing the synergies. So typically what will happen is that people will come in, it's all about the synergies, but they need to plan for those. It's a team effort. It's not an individual effort. It's all about managing the team process. Reducing the risk. It's a big risk you've just taken on financially. You might be charged something like 9% for the next 5 years. How can you pay for that risk? How can you pay for that extra additional increase in productivity? So leadership is important. Who's in the role? Could they ruin it within the first few days? If the company that you've just bought doesn't like the new leader, what's the situation? So okay, you need to plan, and you need to plan early. So again, just to summarize, great potential, but very high failure rates. You need to do a lot of planning in advance. You need to develop a core competency in it, and that's where we can help. Thank you very much.